Welcome to the Golden Mike podcast, where personal growth simply isn't enough. I'm your host, Mark Cordone, a positive psychology coach, a do-gooder from the island of misfit toys who founded the Joy Revolution. Each week I'll wrap with an extraordinary guest doing extraordinary things through their own revolutionary work to talk about the ups, downs, and all-arounds of life. It's my mission to provoke and empower you through increased joy and inspire you to spark your own revolution to change history for the better. Welcome to the most serious happiness podcast in this multiverse. Welcome to the Golden Mike podcast. All right, welcome back to the Golden Mike. I am here with my buddy, Dave Thompson, not to be confused with the guy who made Wendy's.
Yeah, that's Dave Thomas. That's Dave Thompson, and I've been dealing with that stuff my whole life.
So you aren't related to the guy who made square hamburgers.
And as a white, straight male from New York, that is the kind of oppression that I've had to deal with. I don't appreciate it.
Well,
and I don't have to take it, Mark.
You know what? You don't have to take it.
You're a guest in my house.
You can take that Shasta that you're drinking from right now, and you can just splurt it in my face. But that's a whole other show right there.
I spit in his face.
So I spit in his face. So yeah, Dave. Man, Dave, you are one of the head honchos of Spectrum, which is this wonderful company that really focuses on neurodiversity, and we just took a sort of a trip around, and the people there are so freaking cool. They're so freaking nice. The place is clean. Which I was surprised by. If it's a Dave run show, I thought it'd be paint everywhere and stuff like that. And then Dave's running around with his studded leather jacket there, commandeering the show, man. How long have you been working there?
I've been at Spectrum Designs Foundation since 2015. And it's only been around since 2011, but it's been a meteoric rise. So I mean, the amount it's changed in the almost 5 years that I've been there is just crazy.
Now, is what got you there sort of these ideas of neurodiversity? Did you have a story behind it, or were you broke?
Let's walk it back for a second. Let's walk it back. No, so I always knew
your nippin'
I always knew I wanted to help people.
Yeah.
And it was really pretty unfocused to start. I mean, it was just an idealist that got out of college, sociology major with a concentration in race and gender studies.
That's what I'm talking about.
And just decided to start applying for jobs, whatever. I ended up working with people with IDD, intellectually disabled people, and along with some other populations, including like severely emotionally disturbed teenagers that were caught up in New York City foster care system, like all different kinds of stuff. But overall, whatever vulnerable population that I was working with, I was just disappointed with the lack of meaningful opportunities that people were being afforded. So I was looking for more genuine ones. I had worked with people with autism in the past. I absolutely loved it. But I wasn't against helping other groups of marginalized people. But I found Spectrum Designs, and they are doing some of the good stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I kind of went with it, not just because it was the population it was, but just because of the work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And we can go back to Spectrum for a second, but for those of you tuning in, I just wanted to give you a small slice of the person that's with us today. We met at TEDx Farmingdale, and now Speakers Who Dare here in New York City.
That's right, brother.
He looks absolutely nonplussed by that. He looks absolutely...
I'm shaking in my boot. I feel like after TED, I feel like it's way less scary, but the fact that I'm going to be up there alone this time, because I did TED as a duo, and I could kind of blame everything on John. Not really, but that kind of, when you're able to worry about someone else, it's kind of like put your oxygen mask on you before. Oh, actually, that's not a good analogy.
No, it's a horrible analogy.
No, yeah, but it's just I was able to worry about something else, or almost, you know what it is, and we'll get into this. It's almost like playing guitar and singing into a microphone. Singing into a microphone for me as a punk musician back in the day was made me really nervous until I had a guitar. And then doing the two things, I could kind of like forget about whatever made me nervous or blame it on the other thing.
Yeah,
So
totally.
flying solo for Speakers Who Dare is I'm honored and I'm nervous.
Yeah, I feel the same way as you. I do a Golden Mike live cast on the internet, and one of the things is that it's really lazy like journalism, because I don't really need to come up with a whole lot of stuff to talk about in terms of my life and stuff like that. I don't have to do anything except for ask the questions that I was given, and so I can totally relate to what's going on with you. I can't wait to hear about it. What are we going to be talking about?
What, at Speakers Who Dare?
Yeah.
So the working title I don't know how much I'm supposed to give away. I don't know Trisha that well yet.
No, but let's get you in trouble. Yeah.
No, I mean, what I'm working with is basically the fact that how can I be an advocate if I've been this much of a hypocrite? So I've been an advocate for a bunch of communities, and I've been part of some of them, and I haven't really disclosed. And there's a pretty good reason for that, and I'll get into that whole anecdote in my talk, but kind of just was kind of bullied or censored when I first got into the human services field about how much to disclose. And I just think that we need to all, in order to help everyone, we all need to be a little bit more vulnerable and talk about our challenges a little bit more openly. And, personally, I love telling people what I'm not good at. Because as soon as I'm very empowered by my executive director here, and I say, listen, as soon as you put a spreadsheet in front of me, I'm lost. Like, don't do that.
Right.
And instead, I get to do fun stuff. You know what I mean? It's in my own best interest, but it's in society's best interest too.
No spreadsheet. Take this podcast. See what you can do with it.
Yeah, here's all the fun stuff, Dave.
Yeah.
Walk around and give people noogies and wear your studs and do whatever you want.
He literally was doing it, y'all, before we got like he's joking about it, but he's not. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty much it. Just to be a little bit more honest and put it all out there, because if we all did that, we'd all have our thing that we needed support with or needed understanding about, and we'd all be better for it.
Yeah. Now you grew up here around the New York area, Eastern Long Island?
Yeah.
And can you remember a point where a specific point in which you remember advocacy becoming very, very important for you, whether it be your life or someone else's life?
I have this one. There's probably a bunch, and I've always been very focused on, like, I don't want to say stick it to the man. I mean, that was definitely part of my life, but like the underdog and overcoming and things like that. Like, my favorite movies were always like Newsies. You know what I mean? Like growing up, like I was, rise and seize the day. But there was a few. It was largely unfocused as a youth. It was largely I had all this energy and all this, like, we need to do, and like I didn't really know what we needed to do. There's one moment in my head, I don't know how other people remember this, but I call it the hot pink revolution. In, I think it was 10th grade. I don't know if you remember Family Guy, but in Family Guy, Meg wears like a pink beanie. And I don't know if this kid was trying to be like Meg or just wearing a pink beanie, whatever. But I was a punk rocker, as I, of course, already mentioned, growing up. And my friends and I, we dressed pretty subversive. We had all this energy that we were putting out, but we didn't really have much of a focus. But anyway, we needed foci. And there was a kid named Steve, and he was wearing a hot pink beanie, and we were in this common area in my school during lunch or cutting class or whatever, and some quote unquote jock came up to him and said, take that off or something like that, or I'll take it off of you. And he said no, and then the kid like grabbed his head and, in order to take it off, like purposely like banged his head into a Pepsi machine. And basically, long story short, I see myself as one of like the organizers behind this, but there was about 50 of us in the end that wore hot pink for like the rest of the year, until the point that there was a letter sent home to all the parents announcing that pink was a gang color, and which is like,
I'm sorry, I hit my dome.
I mean, it is funny, but it was dead serious at the time. Like, this was an act of like I was reading about Gandhi and passive resistance and all this stuff. You know what I mean? And it was like, being an activist or being like or an advocate or creating social change doesn't take much, and it could be just like rifling through your t-shirt drawer. You know what I mean? And that series of moments over the last couple months of that year was just huge for me, because I felt so energized behind a common cause with a group of people. You know what I mean? That was super cool.
Now, do you think that if you were the only one doing it, you would have worn the pink? In retaliation,
I was very a contrarian. Is contrarian always a negative word?
No, I wouldn't say it. A negative word.
I was always going against the grain as a kid.
Okay.
Way more so than now. Now I wear a studded jacket because it's 15 years old and I love it and it's comfy and whatever. But I'm not trying to impress anybody. But I used to wear dresses to school, just not because I identified as a female, not because it was literally to piss people off. You know what I mean? Like, it was literally just, why can't I wear a dress to school? You know what I mean? So, I probably would have done it.
What about your experience wanted to piss people off?
I had a rough childhood, and again, bringing all that into focus and coping and realizing why you do what you do takes a long time, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, for everybody. But I dealt with a lot of trauma as a kid, and I had a lot of anger towards men, probably because of my dad. Just authority figures were people that were oppressors to me, even when they weren't. I'm sure there was a bunch of people that I was horrified of, instigating towards, that were good people. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I was probably projecting some of my trauma onto these people. So I think in a way it was for attention.
Yeah.
I mean, and in a way it was social movement. I mean, I agree with all those things. I agree that I agree that people should be able to wear dresses if they want to wear dresses, no matter, you know what I mean? I mean, but it was a pretty obvious, like, slap in the face, or like deliberately, like there was a teacher that was like, is your head on backwards or is your hat on backwards? And like, I'd put my hat inside out and to the side. You know what I mean? Like, I was just, because why can't my hat be backwards? And that,
sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
But yeah, I had a rough go as a kid. I was dealt kind of a very interesting hand. And so, typical story of like, well, he's acting out, something's going on at home,
Yeah.
I wasn't a bully, I wasn't a criminal, but I did play punk rock in any basement that I could find, and have the hot pink revolution.
So there was this countercultural or even anti-cultural stigma that you pulled onto yourself. I just have to ask, as someone who came from that place, very early on, to see someone either shocked or to be upset by something that I do, and especially see them in a position of privilege, it stoked my fire. Yeah. It stoked my fire, and I got off on it, you know?
Well, it creates an us and a them. You know? And it gives you energy. I mean, listen to how excited I got talking about that hot pink thing. I mean, it gave me a focus to put a lot of energy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, talk about this focus.
I mean, good segue. Well, I have ADHD, if that's what you... Yeah. I have ADHD, dyslexia, and possibly, I haven't been given the label of PTSD, but I do have some, again, a lot of trauma from my childhood that I've been having to, that's been bubbling to the surface over the years and I've had to deal with. So I don't think like a lot of other people.
Sure.
And
nor do you remember your TEDx lines.
Oh yeah.
I was sitting next to him. I was right next to him in the Farmingdale TEDx, watching him read his lines from his wrist.
Actually, so I have we're sitting at my desk right now in New York. I can show you like my to-do list, but I have like an entire shorthand language to myself in order to be like a nonprofit director and do all the things that I do. I've developed strategies.
It's
and
amazing.
It wasn't my line so much on my wrist. It was 5 words, but it was the first word of certain paragraphs. Like and they were in
wrote
an order.
A stanza.
No, I didn't. It was one word. For the first the first word of 5 of the paragraphs from like the second half of my talk that I had trouble with. But yeah, I mean, and I thought that was hilarious, and I actually considered getting it tattooed on me.
Yeah, when you told me about the idea of putting like a spreadsheet tattoo, I was like, brilliant, do it now. I want to go back. I want to go back to when you were first diagnosed with ADHD. What changes in the way that you saw yourself? What changes in the way that your esteem showed up, or the way that people treated you?
Yeah.
Or was it just like an ordinary day? Because I remember ADHD back in the day was like,
I was one of the first people.
Yeah,
I was in studies where they were putting like university studies, because that stuff was just coming out. It's been like 30 years since I've been diagnosed, but I don't know if it was like liberating the same way as a diagnosis could be to me as like an adult or a young adult. It was, first there's the struggle. The struggle itself was, I'm not like other kids. I'm also dyslexic. So I wrote full sentences back. I wrote like I was writing in Hebrew. Like, I wrote, completely backwards. My name was Bivab, not David. Like,
oh, wow.
I don't remember exact ages, and I really want to start digging through stuff. Part of the problem with the trauma that I've endured with my parent, neither of my parents remember my childhood either, because they both have had aggressive electroshock therapy.
Wow.
Yeah. And we can get into that, but basically, I couldn't tie my shoes or ride a bike. For a long, like way longer than other people my own age. So that was really stigmatizing. And then, like, I don't remember the diagnosis itself being stigmatizing or liberating, but I remember having to go to the special ed resource room for part of the day, and for that to be a very like othering, quote unquote, thing. It was like, all right, you and Carl, here's your hall pass. See ya. Yeah. And that was hard, because I mean, I don't think we used the word special ed, but it was like, oh, there goes the special ed kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was like automatic. I mean, it didn't matter how cool I was. That was like an automatic.
And when you use the word, here they go, the special ed kids. Did you or other people have the stigma that, oh, here comes the stupider guy?
Oh yeah, for sure.
You felt that? You felt stupider?
Did I? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I felt like like you say misfit toy all the time, right? Like I felt like one of the bad ones. Yeah, totally. And I don't think back then, I mean, it wasn't that long ago, 20-something years ago, but back then, I feel like the collective attitude was a little bit more like, oh yeah, there's that one. You know what I mean? I mean, even my dad, not so much, but my mother I loved to death. And even her, I think that there was the overachiever sister, and then there was like, and there's Dave. You know what I mean? Like, then we, one out of 2 ain't bad. It wasn't like now where, I mean, and that brings me to today. I'm working at a place where we're focusing on people's strengths and working on their challenges and figuring out workarounds for people that are actually really effective, and not just like, well, here's a photocopied thing that somebody else gave me and I've been doing over and over with you for the past 6 months, and concentrate, just concentrate,
right,
just write just write the correct way. It's not like that anymore, but it totally was. Yeah.
Yeah, I could totally see that, and especially we both grew up in the '80s, right? Early '80s, right? So you remember the stigma word? It began with R.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Anything that people didn't understand, you'd call people retarded all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and so we're talking about we're talking about being on a spectrum, but also at the same time, anything that didn't meet this sort of central piece, this status quo, you fell into the R word category.
For sure.
I mean, I'm hearing a lot of stuff, man. I'm hearing a lot of stuff when it comes to trauma, and a lot of stuff. We haven't even gotten to this idea of electroshock therapy, but I do want to hear about Baby Dave and his square hamburgers, and like, can you remember times that that even with all this going on, you truly were happy, or there was a space, or there were things that brought it out of you?
It's a good question. Yeah, no, happy moments, but like, I mean, that stuff's kind of still coming to the surface, because even in those happy moments, like, then I start asking myself those questions, like, wait, but where was my dad when I'm having this happy moment? He was probably inside, blah blah, like, so yeah, I mean, I definitely didn't have, no matter what I thought at the time, I definitely didn't have a happy childhood overall. There was definitely happy moments. I mean, we went on vacations and stuff like that. It wasn't a there's some, I struggle with it a little bit, because if you look at my life on paper without me disclosing all these things that I'm kind of ready to come out with, people would be like, are you kidding? I would love that life, like upper middle, whatever. Like, oh, poor thing, you had learning disability, whatever, at least you had shoes, right? I mean, overall,
they play the oppression Olympics.
Well, yeah. So, but yeah, there was moments that were pretty cool, but overall, it was kind of not great. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm looking at your style. I'm looking at the studded jacket, and I'm like, is that part of the pre-adolescence, or is that something that came up as you started to grow older, because music was something that was a solace for me when I was younger.
Oh no, that was totally a solace.
Oh, it was.
Yeah,
it was.
Yeah. I was early too. Like, I was by 12. I'm 33. Once, I know it's such a silly thing because it's such a rapid...
Backstreet Boys, is that who you were into?
No, once Oasis, Wonderwall came out, that whole album. I know that wasn't very punk rocker, but my sister won concert tickets on the radio, and we went to Jones Beach here, right on Long Island, and it was life-changing. And that concert's actually in there behind the music, because the brothers broke up on stage. Like, they literally got in a fist fight. There's video of it, of them like, I'm going back to England now.
So even your most joyous moments are
right. So I was 10.
Turmoil.
So I was 10 there, because that was in '96, September 6, '96, I believe. And I keep my ticket stubs. But that was a moment where I was like, I was in orchestra and I was playing by ear. I didn't know anything about it. And then, like, I knew that, those guitars have strings and I play bass and that has strings. And, things are clicking and being like, this is my rebellion right here. Like, I can do this. Yeah. And from that moment, very quickly, I dove into the kind of music that I'm still listening to till this day.
What were you rebelling against through that music? Like, is there a specific song, or is there a specific lyric that you remember and it was just like,
Not even. I mean, so much of that stuff, because I was listening to, like, grunge and, like, some just aggressive punk that was just, like, chaos and not really, like, anything political at the time, except, like, maybe Rage Against the Machine.
Sure. And
stuff like that. But I didn't know what any of that stuff meant. You know what I mean? It was just, at that time, it was just like, you don't understand me, Mom, slams the door. You know what I mean?
So you were emo stage.
Well, I gotta play some of my old band stuff. But yeah, it took a while for, again, unfocused is something that I'm gonna keep saying, not just an ADHD pun, but it took me years to, like, hone in on what I was after. You know what I mean? And a lot of it was just, like you said, a solace, just being able to shut my door and this is my thing. Me and those others that I'm friends with,
Right.
we have something that we have together, and you don't like it, and I like that you don't like it. That's fine with me. You know what I mean?
Right. Was there ever a point that you can remember finding that solace?
I remember moments like I remember very specific little 10-second clips of laying, literally like the most stereotypical, like laying on my bedroom floor being like, the Deftones are everything, you know? and it did definitely provide, I mean, it was a pacifier to some extent. It definitely provided me with like,
Sure.
well, at least I have this. I have my own little cave with all the posters, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm moving to the basement, Mom. And yeah.
Wayne's World. So here we are. We're looking for a place of solace, right? And oftentimes when you're looking for a place of solace, one of the bigger questions is, what's home, right? And for you at the time, what did you define as home?
It's crazy to say school, because school wasn't great either. But my friends were my home.
Like your chosen friends were your home?
Yeah, and like,
Okay.
you know, the streets, like skateboarding and like breaking bottles behind the supermarket. You know, it's just like I was never really, really bad, but I was definitely like, you know, a kid that was just like hanging out around.
Were you the
town.
kid that drank the ginger ale bottle and then you'd throw it in the street?
Let's go throw stuff at trains, man. Yeah, but no, my home quickly became my friends, because around that time, you know, when I was a little kid, I didn't know what was going on. But once I started being able to go out and ride my bike and do what I wanted to do, I mean, it was that typical story of like, you know, you were supposed to be home after dark. And that's because of all the craziness going on at home, because I really wasn't being raised during that time. You know what I mean?
How much of your friends then are actually still your friends now?
A bunch. Yeah.
Yeah, so you stayed together pretty...
Yeah, I mean, we're not super close. We don't hang out. We're all spread out all over the country. We all live really, really different lives. But,
Okay.
Yeah, no, I still have friends from then.
Okay, so we're going into your high school years now. Are we seeing a stark difference between your high school years versus your early years, or are we seeing a continuation of sort of the, I don't want to call it the descent, but like the sort of punk rock, anti-establishment Dave coming out?
I'd say that was most pertinent from 8th to 11th grade, was when I was just straight up like very subversive, you know? And then things started to make a little bit more sense. Then I, you know, got a part-time job and things like that. You know, I started to understand a little bit more. Well, like maybe my dad's a bad guy. You know what I mean? Like that was, it took a long time. But, and then even after 11th grade, I was still kind of like, I couldn't picture myself here in like my giant office with, you know, all these opportunities and TED Talks under my belt and stuff. I mean, it was still quite a journey from there, you know?
Yeah, I do want to go to that. I want to go up to the TED Talk, like, you know, here's this punk rocker that's now giving a TED Talk and a Speakers Who Dare. Barely accomplished, very hard to accomplish. Let me tell you that right now. Much less do it too.
Only a few people.
Only a few people can do that. You mentioned that your parents, one or both of them, went through electroshock therapy, and I'm curious as to how that was for you, how that was for them, and what was going on in the house.
Yeah, well, my dad's was way later. My dad's was only maybe 3 years ago or something. But the real story, I guess, comes from my mom's. So long story short, my father was very, very controlling of my whole household. And, you know, not all abuse looks like what people think it looks like, or it looks like on sitcoms or whatever. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I had zero privacy. My mother had zero freedoms. I was discouraged. I was, you know, berated and whatever. You know, and my mom went into a depression while I was during my adolescence, and started. I didn't know for a while, and I struggle with whether my dad was doing the right thing to protect me or not, because I was at such a vulnerable age. But I didn't know that my mother was. She'd go away and go to the hospital, and I'd go visit her. And I hate hospitals. I still hate hospitals. But it was because she was trying to kill herself, and I didn't know that until the last time she ever did, which was when, instead of my father finding her and saving her, it was me. And I don't know if that's thanks to me, because that was a deterrent for my mother, or because I started having more of a hand in her treatment from there. But it used to just be like, oh yeah, mom's sad.
What kind of revelation is that for you, where it's, oh, mom's sad, to, whoa, mom had plans to take her life? Like,
it was a real mind. It was. I had a lot of trouble with that. I mean, talk about heartbreak. You know, that's your mom, dude. Yeah. Like, she's not supposed to go anywhere. Like, I didn't care. It was so. The pain was so dull before that. It was just like, yeah, mom's on the couch. She's asleep all day, all the time.
The pain for her, the pain for you.
The pain for me when she was on the couch was dull. It was just like, yeah, my mom never like really talks to me. She's just kind of mopey. I mean, that's unfortunate, but like, mom trying to leave this earth, that's like,
yeah,
you know, that'll really mess you up. And not only is right now, but has been. Like, no wonder, like, having this aha moment of like, how long has this been going on? That in my house, I know I'm a teenager, but my house, that's not okay. Like, that, you know, I was not okay with that at all, and it was extremely, you know, earth-shattering for me. And I mean, in a way, it brought things into focus and made things make more sense. And so I realized that there might kind of be, I don't want to say common enemy. I hate to use those words with the poor man. But like, you know, in a way, it was just like, the same things that are happening to you have been happening to me. Like, I realized we were both controlled, we were both oppressed, we were both really struggling, and maybe I wasn't getting the kind of support that I needed from her, because she needed me to get older and give her that kind of support right back. And now we're best friends. Okay. So I kind of struggle with I think that this is the right thing to do today. To be on the podcast and to talk about this stuff.
How much resentment did you harbor
at her?
Either at her or at the house for like, why the fuck did you guys not tell me?
At her, none.
Okay.
None, ever. I thought that she was sick, she was sad, she was having a hard time. Okay. And there's before that in my life and her life, and there's after. And she has never betrayed me or wronged me or anything since then. My father, I definitely hold some, you know. Yeah. I definitely think that, you know, it's hard for a spouse, of course, to go through that about their, you know, when your wife's trying to off herself, but it made me, his inaction, or there was action, like he'd call 911, whatever, like he'd bring her to the hospital, but there wasn't enough, and it wasn't the right kind, you know. So that made him a bad person to me, and that's never really changed. I mean, there was, again, some things started to make more sense once that happened.
Yeah, I'm just looking at your face and just sort of the way your eyes are semi-rolling and just being like, yeah, he could have been more proactive about this, dude. Yeah. It didn't have to get to this. Hey, it's Mark. I hope you're digging the Golden Mike podcast. If you have or are just starting your own revolution fueled by joy, there's a site I created for you. If you, like me, believe that personal growth is simply not enough, if you, like me, are committed to changing history for the better in both micro and macro ways, check out joyrevolution.com. In there, you'll find an archive of our over 200 Golden Mike Live Facebook shows, and of course, our podcast that you're currently listening to. Check out the blogs highlighting how positive psychology and joy theory apply to your everyday life. There's even some cool clips from our Joy Revolution course geared towards influencers, speakers, writers, and change agents. It's all there. Go to joyrevolution.com. That's joyrevolution.com. Let's get back to the episode. Yeah, so here we are. Did you get treatment for that? Did you go to therapy or anything?
So, wait till you hear this one. So, like many teens or many people, I had dealt with trauma. Now, I didn't go to therapy for that. I went to therapy for like rebelling and stuff. You know what I mean? But my dad made me go, and I was resistant. And where did he send me? Good question, Mark. I'll tell you where he sent me. He found the one therapist that he went to high school with. And dude was an ex-cop, 9/11 veteran that retired and became a social worker. And my dad would call the guy when I was on my way, and he would get a call when I was on my way back. And it was a complete HIPAA violation. And I have since given quite a Yelp review about this dude. Actually, only recently. So no, it wasn't. Maybe we were going through the motions of like,
sure.
I do know that, and actually, like I had to switch from the school guidance counselor going to see her to the school social worker, and I didn't really know why. And they were just like, "Oh, don't worry about it, just go." And it was because I was, these things were going on that I didn't even know about. What's crazy is my sister's 3 years older than me, so we were never in high school together. So when I entered high school, she exited high school, and I went to go see my guidance counselor and for the first time and meet her. And she was like, "Oh, I love your sister." I was always getting like, "Oh, I love your sister, blah, blah. So how's your mom?" And I was like, "She's fine. Why are you asking me?" Because I didn't open up to people back then. She was like, with all the suicide attempts. Mm-hmm. And the first time I had heard that anything like that had ever happened wasn't when I saved my mom. It was 3 years earlier when I was told by accident by my guidance counselor, who assumed that I was in the know because my sister was, which wasn't true. I don't know if I was switched out from seeing her because she messed up or because I needed like some more support.
Wow. So there was a lot of some trust issues that were going on there. And when it comes to therapy, one of the number one pieces of therapy is the ability for two people to build rapport with each other.
Yeah.
And how the hell can you build rapport with each other if you don't totally trust?
And that's the same thing with family, man. I mean,
same thing with family.
I couldn't. The only people I could trust were those like friends I was skateboarding around with and whatever girlfriend I had at the time. You know what I mean? That's why I said that was my home. That was my world. That was my outlet. It was just a mosh pit, a skateboard.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Do you still skate?
No, not in a while. I have one in storage somewhere, but
okay, we might have to skate after.
We got to shred the gnar.
We're gonna shred the gnar. Right. So let's start going into like you're getting out of high school, right? More and more revelations are just like opening up to you, Dave. And you're going into a job in which you're working with disturbed teens in New York City. To me, it makes total sense because that focus that you keep talking about is almost like this purposed focus, right? That allows you to stay in flow. How was that first big gig that you got in New York City?
The first big gig working with teens?
Yeah.
It was really interesting. It was super cool. I mean, I didn't realize how much I'd love it or how good I'd be at it until I got, like, I was literally just looking for a job in human services. I was applying for working with homeless people, HIV patients, like people with, people of differing abilities, schools. Like, I was looking for whatever, just a do-gooder job. Mm-hmm. Landed at this group home that was a co-ed group home for severely emotionally disturbed teens. How do you end up at a co-ed group home for emotionally disturbed teens? Most of the time, either because you were taken away from your family because of them, or you were taken away from your family because of you, right? So I often say gang-affiliated youth in the foster care system. More often than not, there was some sort of that, but it wasn't all just juvie cases and things like that.
Was it easy to relate to them?
Which is amazing, because let's just say completely different neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but was there that just shows you, the human condition, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, they didn't care about punk rock. They didn't, and I actually, in order to win them over, I actually adopted a lot of like the frontwards Yankee hat and the Timbs and I loved it. I love hip hop. I didn't not like it before, but I deliberately kind of changed the way I dressed, changed the way obviously changed what I disclosed. So
what did we got you in fur coats and some chains and stuff? Is that what's going on?
Plain white tee in case you get it ripped off. Jeans, sneakers or Timbs. Frontward, all black, everything, fitted Yankee hat, all the time. Why
do you think you did that?
For them, to gain their trust. I mean, I felt intimidated by all of them. They were tough as nails. Mm-hmm. I was meeting 14-year-olds that it was like reading their file before I met them, and it was like, well, he's blood. Oh, he's a for the folks at home, that's not.
He's a blood.
He's in the Bloods gang. So he's blood. He's blood. He's 14. Then you look at his file. Saw his older brother get shot in back at age 11. Like just the most streetwise and damaged kids ever. Like I was assigned to help them travel train in order to take the train home, and it was just like a legal thing for liability issues to make sure that they were good, and they were travel training me, so I did it was for their own sake to be more comfortable around me, but they would have eaten me alive if they had seen how tight my jeans were. I mean, it's funny.
Tighter than they are right now.
Oh yeah, tighter.
Because I can see your peen print from here, bro.
No, but no, for real though. I mean, they were a tough group, and I was a vulnerable person. It was almost like it was almost like being an actor. Like I was like, all right, now I'm gonna. So I was called Mr. David. Mr. David. Everyone was, and not only was I the youngest counselor at this group home, I was the youngest by a long shot. So I was 22 or so when I started, and I was the only counselor that wasn't a father, or a parent. Not only that, I was the only counselor that wasn't a grandparent. So, there was all these ex-cops and off-duty corrections officers and people who knew exactly what they were doing, and I just didn't. So I needed something. So instead, I started listening to Hot 97, the hip-hop radio station in our community here in New York City, and just literally studying the lyrics, listening to the morning show about who's beefing with who, and I'll never forget.
Oh, I love it. And they throw bombs at each other.
And I'll never forget having zero respect my first week, and then one of my colleagues stopped at the pharmacy to run in while we were sitting in the van, me and this kid. I'm not going to use his last name, but this kid Raheem. I'll never forget him. Great kid. And I had no respect from this individual, and I turned down the radio. We were just in silence. He was so tough, and I just was like, "So what do you think about the Wayne Drake beef?" And he just started spitting. He just started telling me well, I think he's a fool because blah, blah, you know. And I weighed in. And from then on, I was just like, this is it. Like, I can get into this. I can, you know, adopt this culture and I'm not trying to be something I'm not, but I can respect it. And I can, you know.
So it's almost like a newfound sense of belonging.
Oh, for sure.
With this group.
And I need that. I always have. I've always needed to find, like, if I feel, I've always needed to feel like I was part of something. And at that time, I really needed to feel like I was part of something.
And what's really interesting is how you've morphed this idea of home over the years, right? Mm-hmm. The one place that you think would be home may not be the most conducive place to get a home experience. Mm-hmm. And yet there's gang members, right? And there's these recalcitrants listening to punk, and they've got your back in the pit, right? Mm-hmm. Really, really, really interesting. How long did you stay in that job?
3.5 years.
I mean, you've got a sense of belonging. You're doing a good amount of work. What made you get out of it? Leave?
Just upward mobility, really. I mean, I just
Oh, so you sold out on them.
I mean, I was also just, no matter where I went, because I had other little gigs too, I was just so disappointed with the lack of opportunity that people were being afforded with whatever population. Yeah. And so I left to manage a different group home of people with intellectual disabilities. And then that still was, that was more money, but it was still the same thing. It was still, burnt out people in human services doing what they could within the bureaucratic red tape that you have to deal with when you're in human services for the most part. And that wasn't satisfying to me either. So then that brings me to 2015 when I, took a big pay cut to become a job coach at this incredible place where we sit right now, called Spectrum Designs. And we're a nonprofit apparel decoration company. So we employ people with autism and related conditions in the screen printing industry, making products for companies like Uber and Facebook. And the train that you came out on, the conductors were wearing stuff that
so rad.
My participants made.
So rad.
So yeah, we employ 30-something individuals with autism, and I've been tasked with overseeing the entire educational and behavioral support program there. And I don't have a master's degree. I don't, but whatever I do it fully. And this is cool because it's so unprecedented. There's nowhere else like it. So who wrote the book? We had to write the book. And now we're literally writing the book.
Yeah, I mean, I was literally going through and he was showing me these, these stacks of cards, and he's like, no, we had to come up with those. we had to invent that, based on what was going on in the factory. There's a few autism employers that are doing similar things because it's the mission first. It's not the business first. Most disability employers are somewhere great. Like, I mean, Walgreens employs thousands and thousands of people with disabilities, which is great, but they're retroactively trying to fit, their company to fit. Whereas we were mission first. These guys need jobs, right? Mm-hmm. And then the founders Googled recession-proof business, and this was during the recession, and they found screen printing and T-shirts and embroidery because people always need that. Whether you're a plumber, Sweet 16, football jerseys, whatever, people are gonna get their stuff. And that's how it started. And so there was we had to write our own manual, Yeah, so here you are, young man, individual, recalcitrant at an early age.
I'm just hang on, I'm Googling that word, recalcitrant.
Recalcitrant at an early age. Buck the system, very much subversive culture, countercultural even. And here you are managing a group of 30-something people. How much of your identity shifted to this, not identity, how much of your persona shifted to this, well, I must be this for, to to run a group of 37 people, or was it a natural thing going into it?
I don't know. It was gradual because I did come in as a job coach and feel it out at first, and I didn't invent that. I didn't, I'm not a founder, so the model was there and it was amazing. But as far as me being where I am, whereas according to my identity before, I've always, what you could see if you look at my life is I've always identified with the other, with the underdog, and I've always wanted to figure out how to. It's not just bucking the system, because there's plenty of ways to do that, and most of them aren't productive, right? And then there's what I've always tried to do is connect people and figure out what we have in common and how we can get. I guess a lot of my identity comes from what's worked for me, and what's worked for me is like I could actually show you. Like I have my own weird ways of doing things. In order to, I'm handing in my to-do list. So like you could see like my own kind of language on the side of like symbols, and I can tell you what they mean.
The hell is this? Sumerian?
But anyway, like since that's worked for me, that was a huge catalyst to, figure out what works for people.
And is this an adaptation that you've come up with?
Oh yeah, that's just my thing.
Okay.
So like the circle with the arrow that almost hits the other side of the circle, that means that I need to follow up with that person. It's circle back, right? Like it's just like entire sentences in little, almost like emojis next to.
It's awesome.
Yeah. And obviously, like if something's urgent, it's an exclamation point. Like some of them are obvious, right? But every morning I rewrite my list in the same exact way and get rid of the things that I've checked off, and then add more things. I'm very regimented and disciplined in my life because it's the only way that I'll be successful. That's a huge inspiration to me, to show people that they can figure out workarounds, that there's hacks for things, that there's, and that's what Spectrum Designs is. It's just one big hack.
It's one big hack.
It's literally just, it's people doing things that like it would be hard to train anyone to do.
Yeah.
And these people, some of them have never spoken a word out loud in their entire life.
Right.
And they can literally like, alphabetize a pile of papers faster than you or I ever could, or they drive here. Or, and how? Because of supportive parents or supportive supervisors.
Rapport. The therapeutic rapport.
Yeah. And so it also comes from an obvious a willingness and a desire to be productive and to try and fail,
Right.
And all of my success is built on so much failure.
So what happens if I take this and I throw it in the trash? Literally.
Are you asking if I'd be upset or if I'd be useless?
And I'm sure you'd be upset, but like, what happens if I throw this away, or if it gets lost?
I mean, it would take me a while to regenerate all those things that I need to do.
So is this the first thing you do in the morning?
Yeah, like I get in at 8. Okay. I don't have to be until 9, but I get in at 8. And
okay.
It's funny. It's like, someone could say, "Oh, Dave works so hard," but like maybe that's just what I need to do. Like it wouldn't be okay if I started that at 9. You know what I mean? So like it's what I've devised. It's the plan I've devised for myself that works, and I'm completely dependent on it. So when do I do it? On my own time, right? So I get in 45 minutes to an hour early every day. I have I make my tea and I make my to-do list and I play my music however loud I want, whatever volume I want. And that's what works for me. And if I can't do it, I wouldn't be able to be where I am at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And let's talk about the folks that work here in Spectrum. I had the opportunity of meeting them a few minutes ago, but particularly Josh Mursky. I met both of you. He's on the Spectrum, TEDx Farmingdale, and it seems like both of you have been like on this world tour recently, like both you and him doing your own thing, and I think you have a podcast with them. Autism
sounds like autism.
Sounds like autism. How much? I mean, and I'm looking at you right now, and I'm like, this dude is very giving, but also he's got lead singer written all over him. Like, am I reading this wrong? Because like I see a whole other story coming out.
Well, yeah, this is really the first time. I mean, I sent you a link to an article that came out the other day.
I didn't read it.
That's fine. I don't read either. No. So that was me disclosing all these things that we're talking about for the first time professionally, because in that group home with the severely emotionally disturbed individuals, I disclosed like my ADHD and some other things to one of the participants, and like my supervisor basically brought me in the other room and was like, "Don't ever say that again. People are going to use that against you. Never disclose any of that. People, if they want to get rid of you, they can get rid of you based on that. Not in that way, like, oh, he has a disability or he's seen trauma or whatever. He's let's get rid of him."
Like in an HR procedural way.
Yeah. So I shut up. Like I only said it once professionally until an article came out by my own doing. It wasn't like a leak. An article came out the other day about how to. Someone asked me to write an article about bullying prevention, and I said the best thing that we could do is to normalize our differences, and this is how. And it's through disclosure. So I've been feeling like a hypocrite, especially since SLA, my podcast, has come out, and our TED Talk, because I'm like highlighting all the strengths of people who are different. And meanwhile, like, I'm different. And why should I need to be like closeted about that in order to be an authority figure on the thing when I can kind of be a little bit more of a self-advocate? I mean, I don't have autism, but neurodiversity can be, I'm thrice neurodiverse. PTSD can permanently changes your brain. So there's ways that, you're not born neurodiverse. I have ADHD, I have dyslexia. Those are the three. But autism, neurodiversity is also autism, OCD, Alzheimer's, dementia, dyscalculia, dysrhythmia, dys anything. And I just feel like I haven't been contributing all I can because of my own nervousness to disclose the truth about me. Because, very quickly, I have a lot of staff, neurotypical, I think neurotypical job coaches and people who support the individuals that work with us. And let's say I forgot something. I forgot to do something. You didn't take care of that for me. I requested off. I need off tomorrow, and now you're telling me I can't have off. I did request it, right? Let's just say, well, you shouldn't be the director. He has ADHD. Whispers would happen right away, right? This is the paranoia that's been running through my head for years, right? Yep. Not that I'd mess up more because of it, but just that's branding it. That's like, you know what I mean? That's giving someone something, fuel for the fire. Yeah. If there ever was one against me. And, it's still stigmatizing, but how can we get rid of all this stigma? Talking about it, Sure. You don't believe in over disclosure? You're making me nervous. Making me nervous right now, Mark. I'm not gonna lie. What's he trying to tell me? There are things that I won't mention here about myself. That's a good question, because where does it stop? I think whenever it's useful, like, so if I was an accountant, then I would have no need or desire or feel responsible to come out with all of my neurodiversities or all of my challenges or the trauma that I've been through, right? But as someone who fancies themselves not just a human services professional, but somewhat of an activist or or an advocate, how could I? That's like that doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? There's obviously being too honest, and I'm not going to tell you about every little thing, you know, that me and my wife do or something like that. I'm not saying that everyone should just put everything on the table.
Yeah.
But when it's useful and when it benefits yourself and it benefits others, what have I been doing for so long? You know?
Yeah, I actually believe in you. Or agree with you. I don't believe in you. No,
Did you hear that, folks at home? He doesn't believe in me.
I do believe in you. But
you're not gonna get away with this, Cordon.
I think the big thing, because it's become so punk rock nowadays. This vulnerability thing has become so punk rock, and it's just like throw it out there and share it. Without any regard to how this might impact other people in your life, right? And my take on it is 2 questions. Is it useful? Is it in full service to the audience that you're going to tell it to? Because if it's useful and it's in full service, yeah. Move forward. Do not pass go. But oftentimes I'll see folks using the idea of vulnerability without truly understanding
for sure
the idea of vulnerability, and they're just putting people on blast.
And everybody has an excuse for everything, and you can pick things apart, and I'm good at it too. You could, and if I wanted to, I would. You know, like this whole idea of being like a social justice warrior, or you know, that word contrarian that I used before, it like comes to mind for me a lot, because I see a lot of, especially on social media or whatever, a lot of like, what's the point of this energy that you're putting out there, right? And that's why it's taken me so long. That's part of the reason why it's taken me so long, because I don't. The same way I don't want people to use any of the things that I've been through, especially the most personal one to me is like the actual things that have gone on with my family in the past. I don't want any of those things to be used against me, but I also don't want to use them. I don't want to use them. I don't want to use them to be like, I can't get a good job.
Yeah.
I have
totally
a disability.
Yeah,
totally. I don't have a disability. First of all, like, you know, I don't even like that word.
Or even worse, like did you hear the episode where Mark went to the loony bin? You know, like it's using those stories to like totally get people to sign up for your funnel.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? It's bullshit in my mind. And so I want to ask you a couple things. You became married recently.
Yeah, a couple years ago.
Yeah. How does somebody like you get married?
It's such a cute story. So, minding my own business, right? All of a sudden, we used to drive around those kids at the group home on Sundays.
You married someone from Spectrum?
No. The group home, the severely emotionally disturbed kids, I used to drive them around and find, like, so for example, 7-Eleven convenience stores on July 11th every year, it's free Slurpee Day. 7-Eleven is free Slurpee Day.
Amazing.
So we you know, these are nonprofits. You can't really like spend a lot of money. So I'd drive them to every 7-Eleven I could find. That's just like an example.
Yeah.
You always end up spending some of your own money on the guys.
Sure.
I took them to a cupcake shop, and my future wife was the cupcake girl.
Really?
Yeah, and they'd be like, "Yo, Mr. Dave, are you taking out cupcakes this weekend, boy?" So yeah, I fell in love in 2012. Fell in love with Priscilla
at first sight, or was it?
I mean, I asked her out. Yeah, no. Well, I took them one Sunday at a certain time, and then I deliberately was like, "No, Raheem, get in the van. We're going back." Like the next Sunday, not telling them why. And then whatever, we started talking a little bit and took her out.
Someone's got game.
Yeah, I mean that was pretty. That was I always tell my wife, I say, I didn't like shoot my shot regularly, but I didn't usually do things that were that smooth. Like that was definitely the smoothest,
That was
thing
slick,
I've ever
bro.
done.
That was slick. And then like 3 weeks later, we're humila bowling with her, and she's got to do the worm across the bowling alley.
So we started hanging out right away, and she's in the same field. I mean, now she is. She was in cupcakes. Now she's in. She supports people with autism. Mm-hmm. And she's an incredible person. We got married in 2015, and had a punk rock wedding.
No, you didn't.
Of course we did. There was the bride and groom on the wedding cake were a skull.
Yes.
Skulls. And
yes.
I mean, yeah. We totally did.
Do you have a punk rock baby?
Oh yeah. You haven't seen my baby's studded jacket?
No, I haven't. I've seen pictures of Veda, but I haven't seen that. What was that like in terms of a shift in your well-being, a shift in your happiness with your wife and Veda?
I honestly think that when you talk about this, rise and my ability to be successful, forget my to-do list. Like if it wasn't for her, not to say that I think that it's like behind every powerful man is a, I hate to be like, man, the wife's at home cooking me dinner, man. Yeah. But like I am
he's got one of those old timey cigars.
Yeah. I am kind of a man child, and I'm not as good at taking care of myself as some other people are. Not like George or one of our other friends who probably irons his wife beaters. But what's it called? George, I strive to have a crisp wife beater like you. No, but she really enabled. I get celebrated a lot, and I get to do a lot of cool things, and she if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be anywhere near where I am right now.
So again, another feeling of home.
Well, yeah, now I have a feeling of home. Yeah. I mean, this was the first Christmas ever that felt like that. I was like, okay, I get it. You know what I mean? Like what people have been talking about all these years. Even when I was with her and we didn't have the kid yet. Yeah. It was still, when you deal with trauma, mile markers like holidays can be really, really difficult. And so I was always very bah humbuggy. and this one really, I thanked her this year because I was like, I got to like put out the cookies, and then like Santa like came in, ate the cookies, like the coolest thing ever, like and now I feel of course now I have a family,
talk more about that, because this really is a first time for you to have gone through what you just went through, where it's just like a humbug, and then like, oh, this is kind of magical, right?
Yeah, no, it doesn't feel normal at all. I mean, and I think that's really common. There's all this sense of guilt of like, when I was running group homes, every Christmas Eve, every Christmas, first of all, that's double time. You're making double the money.
Yeah.
But also, where else was I going to go? You know what I mean? Like there was, it's a long story, whatever, but like my mom moved, my dad's been in hospitals for years now. And, what else was I going to do, right? Like I really didn't have a normal idea of what was even possible. And that's great. I mean, one of the individuals that I just introduced you to, he lives in a group home, and I take him for the holidays now, which is awesome for me too, because he's a buffer between like me and my in-laws or whatever. It's just like, oh yeah, tell him about your job. But it's been a process realizing that it's okay to have a normal life. Yeah. I don't know how else to say that. Like, it almost reminds me of like when people come back from war or whatever, and like they go to like a birthday party and they just can't enjoy it because they feel guilty or something. Yeah. Like it's hard for me to put my finger on.
It's like you're there but not there.
Yeah, and this is all really just bubbling to the surface lately, like the past couple of weeks for me. But it's okay to wake up happy, go to sleep happy, do some fun stuff in between, treat yourself, treat your family. Like, those aren't things that I've had, and so it's been really special. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really cool. One of the moments I remember was when we finished our Farmingdale TEDx talk, Dave's walking out the door, and I'm like, "Yo, we're eating, man. We're eating. What's going on?" And you're like, "Family time, man." You're like, "It's family time. TEDx has taken up enough of my time. It's family time." And I thought that was very cool of you.
And finding that balance is hard. I mean, for people who have trouble, like how I said, I have trouble concentrating, and I'm very hours of my day are taken up by other stupid things. You know what I mean? And it's hard sometimes to decide. Like even with meeting with you today, like you've become a really good friend, and I want to do all this extra stuff. Or like some of the stuff that I have going on with George. It's like finding a balance between like extracurriculars and making sure I get home to my family has been a thing, because I used to not have one. I used to not have as many cool things going on either, but I would be at like the Sunday matinee at CBGB's or the punk in Manhattan. Like I was always just like, yeah, I'm down. Yeah, that's cool. Whatever. And learning this discipline, this life balance, I mean, it's still a thing that I really need to concentrate on and work on. But it's a crazy feeling to even say like, no, I have something else going on. What is it? It's not something big or exciting. It's not a concert that I'm going to. It's not like I want to put my baby to bed. Yeah. And that's by far, I mean, talk about rewarding. Like my job's rewarding, but putting your baby to bed, like that's where it's at. You know what I mean? Our friend George Andriopoulos has leadership classes, and I went to one, and he says something like, success doesn't start in the boardroom, it starts in the living room. And I agree. I mean, I don't want to be in a boardroom either, but it's so true. You know, you have to be right. You have to be right at home, and you have to be happy with all of that, and you have to feel like you have a home.
Absolutely.
Work can't be home. I mean, when I was at the group home, that was my home. That was the closest thing I had to a home. And that's where burnout comes from. That's where, you know, that's not going to end up being a fulfilling life. I'm glad I did it. Yeah. But the fact that I have this duality happening now between like what I do during the day and what I get to do at night and on the weekends, that's new. That's super new.
Let's talk about that for a second, because this duality is oftentimes a persona, right? There's Dave the persona, the mask, and you were the Soch major, right? Mm-hmm. So we can talk Goffman together. For sure. So there's the persona that you put on for work. Take that off. You go home. There's a persona of dad that you put on for your family. What is the true personality when you take off all the personas?
That's really interesting. I don't know which one's true, but I do know I had to learn the husband dad thing, and that's been a struggle. It hasn't been easy. Ask my wife. I mean, it's been. I zone out. I make this thing called the face. I'm going to do it for you. No pictures, right? She finds me and she's like, "Damn it!" So the face is like this. Where it's really ugly. Like it's amazing that she even stays with me. And when I was living by myself,
that is ass face ugly, man.
Yeah, but that's the one that I've struggled with. I mean, she always says like, "Oh, you're so social. You're able to like go and have like, you're able to like go, you know, not everyone, for example, could go up and do a TED talk, right? Like, and that is easy. Screaming into a microphone 10 years before that. Yeah. That was easy. Yeah. And going home at night. So let's talk about the punk thing. Playing in bands and then going home. That was the easy part. Going home and walking in my front door and, you know, not knowing what was going on, or even knowing what was going on, not wanting to deal with it on the other side. Mm-hmm. That was what was hard. And so I've had to realize that I'm not in there. That's not me anymore. Like that's not my life anymore, and that's okay. That's a good thing that that's not my life anymore. And this is what being a functional, real, happy person looks like. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I've had to figure all that out.
Trauma, recently. Stress, whatever. I think this is a perfect segue to go into well, what does the real Dave look like, right?
Bald, 6 feet, bald.
Incredibly handsome. More like 5'1", bro.
Incredibly handsome.
More like 5'1", bro. No, that's me. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to throw out the beginning of a sentence, and I want you to carry it forward as much as you want, or I want you to carry it forward with as much detail or lack thereof as you want. It's
cool.
It's challenged by choice, okay? So the first question I have for you is, joy tastes like...
I have a huge problem with sugar. You just threw me off so many. Now I'm thinking about almond joys because that's a food with joy in it. Oh. Welcome to my mind. Joy tastes like my joy is energetic. It's a lot like yours. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I use the word stoked a lot, and when I feel true joy, it's an excitement. It's like, even if I talk about putting my baby to bed and that's joy, when I'm telling you about it, like that amps me up. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That makes me crazy happy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and also candy.
Well, that helps create the sense of joy. Joy feels like...
Joy feels right. You know, like, and I know that's a short one, and I can elaborate a little bit. Like, when things click, and it's taken a long time, years. Like, I talked about how long it took me to tie shoes, right? Joy is when things click for me, and when things make sense. Because so much of my life, historically, has not made sense. And I didn't know what to make of that. I didn't know if that was normal. I didn't know, you know, so joy, it feels like an aha moment. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it could be the same aha moment that it was yesterday. You know, it could be like getting home and putting my weighted blanket on. You know what I mean? But it feels like when things click.
Joy is definitely a weighted blanket.
And by the way, only use Magic Weighted Blanket, the original weighted blanket. Not that they're a sponsor of my other
What are you, a freaking affiliate? Come on, man. And this joy brought to you by Snuggies. Joy looks like.
For some reason, all that's coming to my mind is joy looks like working, going home, getting a solid amount of sleep, eating 3 meals, drinking your... I always think that maybe, like, if you did all the things that they tell you to do, that you die. Like, you drink the 8 glasses of water, eat the 3 meals, like, how many fruits, how many vegetables, whatever. But, like, I forget the question. But
I'm at the top of the pyramid. I'm at the top of the food pyramid.
They actually changed
Help
it. It's a plate now.
Oh, it's a plate.
Yeah,
okay.
which makes more sense. What was the question again? Because I'm getting somewhere with this.
Joy looks like.
Yeah. So, like, it looks like I love writing things down, and I love a schedule and a structure, and I never knew how badly I needed that until I slowly developed it, right? But joy, to me, joy is discipline. When I'm disciplined and I'm doing those right things and things click for me, I'm happy, I'm functional, and I'm making the world better, and I'm better because of it. When things are in disarray and out of that order, which I lacked so much of when I was a kid, that's horrifying to me. And I'm not OCD. I'm not, like, particularly about like how neat things are or anything like that. I'm talking about, like, waking up at the same time, going to bed at the same time, being able to, like, if you were to tell me right now that my wife wasn't going to be home when I got home, I'd be, like, super bummed. You know what I mean?
So it's like
I'm not used to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's okay if I'm warned, but, like, I take a lot of comfort in the discipline of my life now, and that's joy for me.
Awesome. Joy sounds like
autism on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
No, I knew it.
No, joy sounds like quite literally, what I do is I listen to nothing. I listen to binaural beats and sounds, particularly low frequency. I don't know why. I feel like I'm like an elephant, or you know how like dogs can hear certain sounds and whatever. For some reason, that just resonates with me. If you YouTube low frequency binaural sounds, the first video that comes up, I listen to it for like 3 hours every day. And to me, being in my own, I have a big echoey office now, and being able to be in my own headspace and do what I want to do, I'm so dependent on sound. And so hearing nothing is okay. Hearing two things at once is hell for me. I think it's partially because of my ADHD and partially because of the kind of things that I used to be hearing, I think. But even like the TV and talking are two different sounds in two different rooms. I wouldn't be able to talk to you right now.
Okay. Not joy.
Not joy. That's
not joy.
Anti-joy, whatever that's called.
Anti-joy. Let's do one more.
I love that band. Anti-joy? Sounds like one.
Yeah.
He thought it was. He was like, I like their old stuff. Totally. I promise. I've heard them. I know them.
I've got a sticker on my laptop. Joy smells like
Teen Spirit.
Yup. That was too easy.
What does it smell like? I don't know. When people tell me I smell good, it's always my deodorant.
So it's Joy. It's Procter and Gamble's medical.
You know what's crazy? My smeller's broken. If you look again, something. See how it's totally crooked.
Crooked.
Anyway, I got punched in the face in 2009 because I was defending a girl that was being roughed up in a mosh pit, and I broke my nose. Whatever. That's an interesting story, but not that interesting. The interesting story is the next day when I go to the ENT, the doctor was like, "How many times have you broken your nose before?" I was like, "Never." And he was like, "I see at least like 2 other breaks." And so my nose is shaped like an S, or maybe like 2 S's, one on top of the other. So I don't really know what choice.
I just thought you were Illuminati with all those logos on your nose, man. I was like, man, this dude's really into the spectrum thing with that S-shaped nose. Yeah, and here's the final one. My revolution is.
So many puns and references to culture I could do for that.
Yeah.
It's actually very topical. NoFX, a great punk band from, I know you know them, but for the folks at home, a great punk band from the early 80s that's still around, and I've actually gotten to spend some time with over the years, name drop, whatever. But very legendary, but poppy punk band from San Francisco. NoFX. They have a song, and there's a line that the People's Revolution is going to be a podcast. and I think that there's so much truth to that. And in fact, well before I'd never even listened to a podcast before. When I was writing my senior thesis in college, that song had just came out, and I was writing my senior thesis on music and social movement. What was the name of it? Music and social movement. Something about social movement in the digital age. So basically the fact that the tools are now at our fingertips to be able to create social change from wherever, from like rubble in Syria or whatever. You're tweeting, and it's an amazing, beautiful thing that's leveled playing fields and lowered barriers, and I think there's so much truth to that, and I'm still living that. Like the same exact microphone that I was recording vocals into 15 years ago is the microphone that I put in front of Josh to start my podcast.
Amazing.
And it's still a very punk rock thing, even though Josh is not a punk rock person, right?
Yeah.
Putting a microphone in front of
What do you got, an SM57?
No, I wish. No, this is a lame USB mic.
Nice.
But to me, the revolution, it looks like every free app that people are communicating on right now. It looks like Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and it looks like connections and how people are now enabled to like. I mean, I know that people know this, but do you really understand the power? And when you pick up your phone every day, are you thinking about what you're putting out into the world? And it doesn't take much to join a revolution. It's a hashtag. Like, it doesn't take much to be part of something and to add to it, to contribute to it. It's literally free as long as you have the device and you have Wi-Fi. It's costing you
Which
nothing.
is a privilege in and of itself.
Oh, of course, but there's a Starbucks, and now you don't have to buy anything, okay? Because they arrested a guy.
Thanks to revolutions.
Thanks to them.
Thanks to First World Revolution.
Thanks to some guy waiting for his friend and getting roughed up by the cops in New York City. Now you don't have to buy anything. So what I'm saying is, of course, people know, like, oh, it's really broken barriers and whatever. But, like, what are you doing with it? And do something with it. Do something positive. Retweet something. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying a lot of that is empty, and a lot of that is like for, virtue signaling or attention getting behavior, attention seeking behavior. But it's still necessary, and people can tell your intentions. The people who matter can tell your intentions.
Why is revolution necessary?
Revolution is necessary because, this country wouldn't exist, baby, without revolution. How do things change without revolution? I think my opinion, and maybe I'm super cynical, is that the natural progression of society, which is such a broad word, or capitalism, or democracy, or whatever, the natural progression, if you're not careful, if it goes unchecked, is an ugly place. Right? And there has to be deliberate pushback, and there has to be a balance. There has to be something that brings it back and recalibrates things. And so a revolution is just a more it's a little bit more in your face. It's a little bit faster and more dramatic, but it's the way it's part of the. I almost said revolution in the explanation, but I'm making a motion like the world is turning. It's part of it.
Yeah, everything turn.
It's part of. It's like the dinosaurs going extinct, man. It's part of the balance of everything. And so it's 100% necessary. When anything unchecked becomes problematic, whether you liked it at first or you didn't. Anything unchecked is no bueno, right? So. You need a healthy revolution every once in a while. You know what I mean?
So talk to me about the one that you're leading right now.
I'm leading a revolution towards a more inclusive world for people labeled different, whether that's sure, it's pretty autism heavy right now, but that's not to say that that's not what I'm going for. I think people have the right to work, people have the right to love and to live, and to to be empowered to make their own decisions, and to have a voice and use it. And I'm talking a lot about neurodiversity lately, because that's just where I've found a place in the world that sees where I'm going with this and appreciates it and needs it. And I love it. But in general, I think my revolution's a little bit more broad than that. I'm just not part of all of it in such an acute way, because you got to pick somewhere, right?
Yeah, I see it being like an expanding bullseye for you.
Yeah, right? For sure. And I think that meeting people like you and some others that I've met over the past year or so that are doing just some more self-empowerment and self-betterment stuff is important for me, not just personally because I learn from you and I need that stuff, but also because I feel that I have an energy that people feed off of when I'm showing people around Spectrum Designs.
Totally.
That could be about anything, not anything, but anything positive and anything. You know what I mean?
It's amazing. I mean, once a black sheep, didn't fit in. Now he's walking around Spectrum, all dressed like Freddie Mercury out here. It's amazing. And now you're the big boss. Dave Thompson and your hamburgers. It's been a absolute delight. I told you it's gonna fly, man.
Yeah.
It's gonna fly.
Yeah, this has been a blast.
I hope you can come back and we can talk more stuff. Thank you for coming out. Final thing, man, for those of you who feel like a black sheep, who feel like you don't fit in, who can't, who have a revolution in you, remember, revolt in love, in light, in shadow, and in joy.
Love it.
This has been the Golden Mike Podcast. We'll talk to you soon.
I hope you enjoyed the Golden Mike Podcast. There's more good stuff coming your way. But until the next episode, let's stay in touch, yes? Find us on Instagram as TheJoyRev, or communicate with like-minded revolutionaries in our Facebook group. Search The Joy Revolution Underground. And of course, don't forget to check out the classes, articles, blogs, and some serious fun at joyrevolution.com. That's joyrevolution.com. Now, until then, what will you do to change history for the better? Let's go out and play, shall we? Press start to begin.